Hi, state your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Carla King Chapman, and I am the mother of Lily Chapman.
Okay, and we're going to be talking about you moving to Malaysia with your father and him taking you different places, correct?
Correct.
So, when did you move to Malaysia?
Well, actually, it was after I finished college, and my father was living in Malaysia, and I returned home and I lived with him in Malaysia for probably a couple of months.
Okay. Um, what did you expect when you went there? Like, what were you expecting?
I really had no idea, and it was just sort of a matter of I was 22 years old, and I finished my degree, and I was going to go see my father. And I just got on a plane and I took off and I went to the Far East all by myself without having a clue. I mean, I knew where the country was. I knew, some things to expect. I went back in the day, you look at your Encyclopedia Britannica and I learned where the country was, but I really was very naive and had no idea what I was getting into.
What did you prepare to go there? Did you learn about anything about the country, or did you just show up?
Well, other than knowing where it was geographically, no, I really didn't prepare very much at all because I knew that he was going to be there, but I didn't know how little amount of time I would be spending with him because he was offshore on the oil well working. So he would leave me for a week at a time. He'd come back for a week and a week at a time. And so I had to find out a lot by myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were there any big like translations, like cultural misunderstandings that confused you when you first got there, and it took you a little bit to understand them?
One thing I thought was really interesting, and because Malaysia was a British colony, that there was such a diversity of people that lived there, and they all had British accents. And my father lived in a home that he had servants, but the servants were from Indian descent. And so I didn't think about Malaysia having such a population of people from India and that they would have such British accents there. But then also learning learning their culture. I remember our maid took me home to her house to meet her family, and the difference of the food and understanding her religion, and that was really. But in Malaysia, because it was so diverse, it wasn't as culturally shocking as when we went to Bangkok. And that I found to be quite a bit different.
You said that your dad would leave you for weeks at a time. How did you get around town, and how did you like go shopping and everything?
Well, he left me the car, which the driving mechanism was on the opposite side of the car, and you had to drive on the opposite side of the road. And I basically knew how to get from the house to the club where the country club basically where it was, and then there was shopping around that area, or I got a map and I figured out where the zoo was and I just drove myself there. I figured out how to do it.
Did everyone drive in cars? Or were there different types of like
Oh,
transportation?
lots of different transportation. I mean, there was, I guess you could almost say like rickshaws, but there were people pulling things. There were lots of bicycles, a lot of motor scooters, and no pollution control necessarily in Malaysia at all. So it was very smelly in comparison we went to Singapore one weekend, and how extremely clean that country was. But in Bangkok, it was really crowded with population and cars, and I'm at 4 minutes. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Keep going.
All right.
What was the hardest thing to get used to after you moved?
The time change first, and then the monsoon. It was during monsoon season, and so the storms would come in, and how we would have to get up and prepare the house in the middle of the night with the monsoons. But the next day would be really great. But I was fortunate is that the housekeeping staff were hired by the company, and so they fed us American food. But in Bangkok, we had to learn the different types of food, And the language there wasn't as much English being spoken, so you'd have to have your greetings of Sawadika and Kapkunka is saying thank you and some of those types of things.
What about like meetings and greetings, like saying hello and saying goodbye to people?
Well, in Malaysia, because it was a British colony, it was English.
But what about
mostly.
when you would like travel to like
But
Singapore and Bangkok and
with
stuff?
Singapore also, there was very, very similar, a lot of English. But in Bangkok, the a bowing of the hands, and they would say sawadika, and that's your hello and your goodbye. And whenever you would say thank you, you'd say kapkunka, and so you were able just to pick up some languages that way.
If you were to use 3 words to describe that culture versus our culture, what would it be?
Respectful, particularly to elders. Um, Welcoming to people who didn't look like themselves, and very sharing to share their culture to help you understand.
Good. Well, thank you so much for
Well, thank
describing
you.
your country and you moving with me.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Push stop.